This is Renee Romeo, and today's project is how to reupholster a Parsons chair. Now, this is an easy project for you to complete. If you've already reupholstered a chair seat pad, then you'll have all of the skills that you need to tackle a project like this. So let's start taking the chair apart. When you're looking at a piece of furniture and trying to figure out where to start, you always start on the areas that you can see first. So you can see that this is layered on top of the seat fabric. So we're going to go ahead and start with the actual skirt. So what I have here is a tool that is actually not for staples, it's more for nails. And it's a reupholstery tool, and so it's got this V groove in the top, and the great thing about it is you can get the little tip underneath the staple and you can pull that out. So you see I've added a little duct tape to the top of this. It has a plastic handle, but if you're doing this for a long period of time, this sits in the palm of your hand and it really does rub you kind of raw. So I put a little extra padding in there to get going. So here's the tip, and so all I'm going to do at this point is just kind of push it in here like so and try to get up and underneath that staple and pull this out just like that and get it in between these two pieces of fabric and just keep pulling. Now once you get your skirt off, you're going to see these little flaps of fabric, and that's just to hide the actual leg so that you don't see it when it's reupholstered. So you're just, again, you're going to get your little tool in here and you're just going to pry this off. You need to keep track of every single piece that you pull off of any kind of furniture. Otherwise, I think that's kind of the worry, is that you're going to have so many of these pieces laying around you're not going to know what's what. So take a Sharpie marker, write on it. You won't lose track of what this piece is. So this is the seat. So front seat, label every single piece and you won't have any issues. Sometimes the staples are in a little bit tougher than others, but once you get a system down, it'll be pretty quick for you. Now I've turned the chair over and I'm in the process of pulling off this dust cover fabric. This is a specialty fabric called cambric, and you can kind of see it's really lightweight, and once I get the staple off here, I'll let you see the interior of the chair. So it's kind of going to expose what you have going on underneath here, and really that's all it's used for. It's cut the exact size that I need, so I'm going to go ahead and save this and reuse it. Now that the dust cover is removed, I can go ahead and remove all the staples all the way around the bottom. Now, if you think that you're going to lose track of how all of this went together and what gets layered on top of one another, go ahead and use your phone or camera and go ahead and take a photo of it, because that's the way that you document exactly how things go together, where the staples go, and you'll know how everything gets put back together. So now I'm going to remove the metal tack strip that's on the back of the chair. So you're going to go ahead and take your tool again, and really this is a very rigid piece of metal and it has very long spikes in it so that you can kind of hit it in with a hammer and create a really nice crisp edge. So now it exposes this metal tack strip, and this metal tack strip is designed to be able to be pounded directly into the wood. And if you notice, there's another piece of welt cord that goes along the back edge of the chair here, and that's the other piece that you'll have to sew in order to get this put back together. So there's a little bit of padding in between here, and this is really stiff. It's only about 1/4 of an inch thick, and I'm going to reuse this as well, and it's just held in place by just a few little staples here and there. The fabric is removed from the back of the chair, and so I just wanted to show you in a comparison side by side. I'm getting ready to remove this fabric, and this fabric is actually tucked in between the seat and the back of the chair, and it gets stapled to this piece of wood in the back. So you can kind of see there's an opening here in between this piece of wood and this piece of wood, and that's where the fabric comes out. So this is what I'm going to be releasing and then pulling through so that I can put the new fabric in this space. Now I'll pull the back out, and then I'll pull the seat out. So let's figure out how to measure for our fabric now that we have everything off of the chairs. So I'm taking all the pieces that I pulled off and I'm going to lay them out on a long length of fabric. Now I recommend using upholstery fabric for this reason, and upholstery fabric comes in 54 inches wide or 60 inches wide. Mine is 54, and all I'm doing here is just taking my larger pieces, the fronts, the seats, and the backs, and then over here are all of my individual skirt pieces, and then I need some areas for the welt cord. And the welt cord is always laid out on a diagonal so that I can get a nice stretch out of it and make all of those wonderful turns around the chair. So you'll see I have the front piece, which is 27, the back piece, which is 19 wide. Now let's talk about nap, because my fabric has nap. And nap means that there is a genuine way that you can brush the fabric, and you kind of remember this from running your hand over velvet. If you run it in one direction, it's dark, and if you run it in another direction, it's light. So all of your pieces need to be running in the same direction, and that means from top to bottom, it needs to be laid out in the exact same direction. So my front pieces, the top piece is here, the bottom piece is here. Same, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. So that's how you keep things running in the same direction over the entire piece. Well, now I'm putting everything back together, and you can see the cats really love these chairs, so I need to make sure that everything's going to be nice and secure so they're not going to pull it apart. So the first thing that I've done here is I've taken this seat fabric, and this is what it looks like when it gets pulled off, and it's been pinned directly onto the new fabric. So I'm going to just go ahead and locate the very center of this seat. So I've done it on the back here, and then I've done it along the front edge. So this is exactly in the center of the chair, and I need to make sure that I do this because this fabric has a subtle stripe, and so if I did it off kilter, you'd kind of see it in the end. So you want to make sure that you're centering everything. So the way that I grab the center of this fabric is just to fold it in half and line up all of the edges so that I can get the very center of this fabric and make sure the fabric is lined up as well. And I'm just going to mark it with a pin, top and bottom, so that I get everything thoroughly lined up. And then go ahead and unfold it and set it into place. Now I know that this is the very center of this, but this needs to be pulled to the back if you recall. So I'm going to line this up along the front edge, and this is my very first point of stapling. This is an electric stapler. I really love it. It's convenient, and this is just the right size staple to use for upholstery. So you'll see both of my pins are lined up, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull this fabric around to the front, removing those pins, and I'm just going to staple it to the bottom side, just like that. And then you'll see I'm just going to go ahead and pull the fabric nice and tight all along the edge. Now if you have issues like I do, you're just going to go ahead and get your hammer and pound that in nice and flat. Now everything's in along the front, and I need to push this to the back side. Now I don't go all the way around the edges. I do front to back and then side to side. And that's how you do all of your pieces of furniture. So I'm just pushing this to the back side. And remember that little piece in the back, that little opening, that's the opening that I'm pushing it through. And this is the back side of the chair. The fabric is being pulled through, and I've made a mark directly in the center there so I can line up my pin with this mark. And there's the pin coming through. And I know a lot of you are going to get a little scared because you've got a pair of scissors in your hands, but you need to cut this because it needs to form around this leg. And so you have your pattern piece here that you're working off of, so you can feel free to lay this on top and then just make a mark right at that point. And you'll see right at this point I've made that mark, and I'm just going to start cutting through it so that I can get around this leg and be able to pull this seat nice and tight. So that's going to take a little bit of effort here to get it around, and just do it a little bit at a time until you get just enough. So just clip it a little bit until you get the fabric exactly flat. And see, it's laying flat, but you know what? It's not nice and tight, and you really want to be pulling on this fabric. So it needs to go even a little bit more. Now honestly, this is probably the hardest part of the entire process, is getting this seat to lay nice and flat. But once you get this done, the rest of it is a piece of cake. So you're just going to go ahead and you're going to pull this really tight and line it up with that mark. So now the chair is on its side, and you'll see I kind of have a great line here in the fabric that I could just go ahead and follow. So once I push my hand up and I kind of get this as far over as I can, and then I'm just going to go ahead and put this in place like so and start right in the center. Okay, and now anytime you come up to a leg, you need to cut this, and you're just going to cut it as close as you can to the bottom edge here, and you're just going to put a staple in to hold it in place. Okay, and now anytime you come up to a leg, you need to cut this, and you're just going to cut it as close as you can to the bottom edge here, and you're just going to put a staple in to hold it in place. So the seat is on nice and tight, and it's secured on all four sides, and I'm working on each corner at this point. So I'm just going to go ahead and give a little clip right in here so that I could pull this nice and tight. And you see I've kind of flipped this over. Now this isn't going to be seen, but it needs to be nice and neat at this point, and I'll just secure this in place. There's a little piece of wood here, and it's just going to be attached right onto that piece of wood, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and clip it real close to that edge. That way I don't get extra bulk in that skirt piece that's going to go on. And this can just get stapled right in place. So now I'm going to work on the front corner, and so this needs to be folded in such a way that it's going to look nice. And I'm just going to take the center of it and pull it down and kind of, pull it nice and tight. And then I know where I'm going to staple is going to be right up in here. So I'm just going to fan this out a little bit and get it nice and flat so that I can put a staple in one side and then in the other. Now I'm taking this piece and I'm going to fold it into the corner, just like so. And I'm going to secure this. I might take a little finessing. I'm going to secure this right to the bottom. And I'm just going to go ahead and finesse the other side in the corner till I get it to look relatively even on both sides. So it might take a little bit of finessing before you get it just right. I think that looks good. So I'm just going to go ahead and secure this, and then I can take my scissors and trim off the excess. So the seat is all done and it looks great, and so I'm going to get started on the back. So now this back, you can see it's been trimmed around that back leg. So all I'm doing here is just kind of starting it off, and I'm just trimming up a little bit with the scissors and trimming up a little bit with the scissors. This is going to go right around that leg. So I've marked the back of the seat, if you remember, and I just folded this in half to find the center of this fabric, both on the bottom and on the top. So I need to make sure that this is going to reach all the way back so that I can go ahead and staple in the back. And then I'm just going to go ahead and tuck this in for now. Remember that little space here that's still available. I'm just going to tuck it in and pull it to the back side. And the way I start here, so I have my pin here, I have a mark here, and there's just a little bit of wood here to staple into. So I'm just going to pull this enough, remove my pin. Now from this point, I'll pull this over and follow this cut line all along the back so I can get this nice and tight all the way from the center to the side. So a lot of reupholstery is about pulling things tight and really coaxing fabric along. And I'm finding a bunch of bunching here, and since I only started that clipping, I need to pull this out again and clip it a little bit more so that I can get it nice and tight around that leg. And so I think, if you do it again, 1/2 inch at a time, that's really the good metric, because you're not going to be clipping away too much fabric and making a mess for yourself, because you don't want to clip away too much fabric. So you're just going to do a 1/2 inch at a time and keep testing back and forth, pulling the fabric and coaxing the fabric in place. So now once you can pull on the fabric so that it's nice and tight, you'll see I've marked both pieces of fabric right in the center. And then once everything's in place, you could just take this fabric and just pull it to the back side and just tack it in place. So I'm pulling this nice and tight across the face, and I'm just tacking this right in the center. And again, because I have stripes here, I can go ahead and just kind of follow that stripe all the way down to make sure that everything is really nice and lined up. And then let me just show you how I coax this in place so you can see it from the front side. You saw it from the back, but from the front side, that side is already done. And I'm just running my hand across the top here, and I'm making sure that this is nicely lined up along the back. And I'm just going to put a couple of staples in, come back up, and just keep moving up ever so slightly, so that way I get a nice smooth surface. And you know, this really is, it's almost laying perfectly the way it is now, so we're just going to tuck this in and under, line it up with that leg, and then staple it in place. So if you see this area, you'll see there's a little bit of dimpling going on. So what you need to do if you experience this is back off of these staples, realign them, and then restaple them in place. The next thing I'm working on is this roll, and so this is just a series of pleats. So I'm showing you this from the side. So the very first pleat is really easy to get. It'll automatically go there for you. And what I want to show you here though is, if you can imagine all this stuff kind of being bulked up here, that's going to be too much fabric. So what you need to do is you need to fold this and then go back in and kind of take away some of this fabric from the back side so that you don't have too much bulk when you're actually putting on your other 2 layers of fabric for the backing. So let's just go ahead and take out this triangle piece and then go back in. And so you're going to be doing this back and forth, just like this. Staple it in place. So if you have more than one chair that you're working on, you need to make sure that all of these pleats are the exact same size. And how do you do that? You get a ruler and you make sure that all your pleats are the same size. So this is a 2-inch measurement. I'm going to go ahead and pleat this into the corner, making sure that that's going to line up perfectly. Then I'll pull it away and I'll go ahead with my scissors and get on the inside again and trim this out so that I don't have that excess bulk. And I'm going to try to get up as high as I can and get all of this fabric out of here so I have another triangular piece of fabric that's going to come off. And here's the next one. And the same thing, pair of scissors, get up underneath there, trim out your triangle. So for your last one, you've got a little piece of fabric here. And this is just going to come in just like this. And if you can imagine, this is going to be stapled all the way across eventually. So we can go ahead and trim out that little triangle piece. And staple that in place. The next thing I'm doing is taking this fiber fill batting and putting it on the back. Now again, you don't need to secure this all that well. Just a few staples will do it. So I need to go ahead and make new welt cording. And this welt cording goes around the back and around the seat of each chair. And so I could go ahead and pull all this apart, but honestly, new cording is so inexpensive that I'm just purchasing new stuff and I'm just going to go ahead and recover it. So the way that I do that is I just have a ½ a yard of fabric. It's all you need in order to cover both chairs here. And so you're just going to go ahead and take it, and the direction that my lines are running is in this direction. So this came off the spool in this direction. And I'm just going to go ahead and take one corner and I'm going to flip it up on a 45-degree angle and meet it at the edge. So what this accomplishes is some stretchability of this woven fabric. And the reason why you want that is because anytime you're running cording over a corner, it'll hug that corner really well and make a nice crisp look. So anytime you're making welt cord, you're going to want to do this on a bias, and that's what this is. And so all I'm doing at this point is I'll just take my scissors and I'll run this along that folded edge and cut this out. So cotton cording or piping comes in a lot of different diameters, and this one is 4/32. And so the way that I'm going to measure the width of this piece of fabric so I can cut strips is I'm going to take the cording and I'm just going to flip it over onto itself. And then I'll take a ruler and I'll make sure that I need a 1/2 inch lip here in order to be able to staple into. And so I'm just going to go ahead and make a mark here with my pencil so that I have a 1/2 inch here and I have my cording on the other side. And so now I can go ahead and measure this, and this becomes 2 inches. So I'm cutting 2-inch strips out of all these fabric pieces. So I have 14 strips marked out along my fabric, and I'm just going ahead and cutting each and every one of these out. Okay, so in order to join these two pieces together, the way that I do this in one continuous length is I'm going to take this and flip it over on the top, just like so. So you're joining these 45-degree angle pieces together. Now your first thought would be to maybe put this together like this with a 1/2 inch seam, but when you do that, when you flip it over, you'll see it's not going to line up along the edges. So what you need to do is you need to take this top piece and move it down. And you're moving it down so that you have a 1/2 inch here, like a little tail, and then a 1/2 inch here, like a little tail. So that when you put your 1/2 inch seam in, you're going to wind up with one long continuous length, and that's exactly how you want to do it. And you'll see all of my lines are running in the same direction, and the line that you sew is going to be in the same direction as well. So it's not going to be detectable when you put it onto your upholstered piece. So you'll see I have the cording in the middle of the fabric. I'm going to line up the selvage edge so that everything is nicely lined up. My machine is actually a heavy duty machine, but if you have your regular sewing machine, go ahead and put in your zipper foot, and you're going to stitch very close to that edge of the cording. Now this presser foot is really specialized. It's got a little hump in it so that this can kind of move along underneath that and create a really nice stitch. So I'm going to get going. And so here is my finished piece, and you'll see there's my seam in the back, and then there it is in the front. And when this is all done, you'll never know that there's a seam there. Now that the welt cord is all finished, I'm lining it up with the edge of the wood. So this is from the leg all the way to the top of the chair. I have longer staples in here now, so it's 9/16 staples that I'm using because it needs to go through several layers of fabric. So I'm just going to go ahead and just put a couple in, just like so, keeping this nice and lined up along the edge. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and take this and just fold it over onto itself so it creates a really nice crisp corner. And I'm making sure that I have this up high enough so that it catches the wood underneath. So when you get to the end, cut this a little bit long. And if you've ever seen cardboard on a roll, this is what you use it for. So we're just going to get a nice crisp edge along the top, and you need a little piece of cardboard underneath the fabric in order to accomplish that. So we're just going to cut a piece a little bit long actually, and this is what's going to go underneath the fabric along the top. So here's my backing fabric, and I have it kind of lined up along the bottom, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm flipping it back onto itself, and this is going to be attached to the top like so. And so all I'm doing here, I'm just going to go ahead and put a couple pins in it just to hold it in place so it doesn't slip on me as I'm working on it. And I'll grab the cardboard, and the cardboard piece is going to lay in just like this. So you're going to grab the fabric and you're going to line it up with that edge. Now, if you can see here, this is the welt cord, and we're going to go ahead and really press it into that cording so that it's nice and tight when it gets held down by the staples. And we're going to line it up with the stitch line on the welt cord on the other side. So right at the side, this is all nice and lined up, and we're just going to put a staple in there. And now for the second staple, same thing. We're just going to press it in really tight to that welt cord at the top and put in another staple. So when I pulled out the metal tack strip, you see some of these pieces got a little bit bent. So I'm just taking a pair of pliers and I'm just bending these back into a straight position. It might take a little bit of effort here, and be careful because it's really, really sharp. So look where I line this up. So it's lined up right with the edge of that cardboard, but it's up about a 1/2 inch because that is the width of the cardboard. So I'm just going to go ahead and poke it through, poke a couple of these through, so you can see how this is going to go in. If you flip it to the back side, what's going to wind up happening is you're going to fold it over this way, and if you could see the teeth, hopefully, it's going to lay in place just like so and get pounded in place. And I need to make sure that it's all nicely lined up with the lines, so it might take a little bit of finessing. So let me just go ahead and work on the back side and get that all lined up. So pulling it nice and tight and getting every little spike to go through the backing in the same spot. So whether you have plain fabric or you have striped fabric, you can measure this if you need to, measure it in from the edge and make sure that they're all the same. Okay, and you can see the spikes, they're all lined up like soldiers, all in a row. And so what I'm going to do at this point is just take the fabric and flip it upside down like that. And it's nicely lined up, and I'm just going to pound it in. Now on the right hand side, I've lined it up the same way, so it's down a little bit from that top cardboard piece, and it's just starting here with it along these lines and just kind of finessing these little spikes in place. So now that that's all lined up, I can go ahead and start pounding this side in. So before I secure the back, I'm going to show you how I deal with this little piece of welt cord that's kind of just hanging out here like a tail. So I have my seam ripper. I'm ripping apart the seam. And what I'm going to do at this point is reach in here and clip off the inner portion of the welt cord. So now I can pull this nice and tight and staple it in place. Now I've clipped the corner here so that I can make it into the corner. And then this piece I'm just going to fold over and staple it directly to the leg. So usually the dust cover goes on last, but in this case it's going on before the skirt. So I'm just lining everything back up where it used to be. And the skirt's going to hide any of these little pieces along the legs, so don't worry about those. This welt cord needs to go along the bottom edge here, and I'm starting at one corner, and you'll see I'm doing the same treatment here on this welt cord. I'm just going to go ahead and trim this off. Now I'm leaving a tail on the end, so there's about 1 inch there without cotton cord in there. And then I'm lining up this selvage edge along the bottom of the chair because we need to have a stapling surface for not only the welt cord but also the skirt. In order to finish this, I'm right back where I started. I've clipped off the end right at the corner, and I'm just going to take this other piece with this little tail and I'm going to sandwich this together. And so this is going to become one, if you will, just like so. And we'll just put a staple in it. I'm in the home stretch, and so I'm working on the skirt, and this is the little piece that covers over the leg of the chair. So you'll see I have my seam ripper in here, and it's very sharp, and it's just going to run all along that edge, and you're going to take everything apart the exact same way. So I've sewn the bottom of this little piece together, right sides together, so this is the old fabric and the new fabric, and then I've gone ahead and put it on my suede covered ironing board. Now anytime you're ironing velvet, you can't just go ahead and iron it on a regular ironing board because you'll wind up crushing all of the nap. You need something that's going to absorb some of that pressure from the iron. So what I have here is a suede covered piece, and I'm just going to go ahead. Now I also don't have any steam in this iron. As a matter of fact, this is a dry iron. You can see it's a solid plate. I don't want to just simply take this and make a crease along that edge because from the front you may see a little bit of this lining fabric showing through. So you see my stitch line is here. It's about 1/8 of an inch in from the fold line that I've just made, and I'm going to press that in place. Now you need to clip out the corners almost to the area of that stitching, so we're going to do this on both sides, and this is going to allow for you to get into the corners with this little bamboo tool. So let me just go ahead and flip this right side out, and I'll show you just how crisp I can get that corner look. So here we go. We're just going to keep finessing our way into the corner, and that looks perfect. And that's what it looks like from the front, and that's what it looks like from the back. So you've got a little bit of that peekaboo right in the back, which is going to allow for you not to see any of that lining fabric from the front. Now I'm going to start taking apart all the skirt pieces. So the difference between the skirt piece and the actual leg piece is that it has this thick stiffener inside, and this is what's going to keep everything nice and stiff looking along that skirt so it doesn't get kind of floppy on you over time. So you're going to take this apart the exact same way as the little leg pieces. Just get out your seam ripper and go ahead and pull all these pieces apart. And you'll line up right sides together and stitch these all along the bottom. This is sewn together, and I'm just going to go ahead and do that same treatment on this piece of fabric because, again, this is a skirt and this is the bottom, and I don't want any of that lining showing through to the front. So I have 1/8 of an inch beyond my stitched line here, and I'm just going to go ahead and press that in place. So I'm going to place this just above that stitch line on the back side of the lining. So the lining is underneath here. And lining all of this up, and then I'm just going to go ahead and put a stitch line right about 1/8 of an inch up from the edge of this backing piece. So I'm getting ready to stitch all of this in place, and you'll see everything's lined up, so here we go. So you'll see now that it's sewn together, this is nice and secure. It's not going to be moving around in that space anymore. And so I'm going to go ahead and flip this again so that I have that nice little edge all along the bottom. And then I'll sew both sides together. There it is, all pressed. So the only difference that I'm going to make to this that I didn't do with the little pieces, so the little pieces are still open. It's such a tiny little area, it's not going to matter if it's stitched down. And because it's a 3-layer item, I'm going ahead and stitching all along the top. So I have this little piece that covers the leg, and I'm just folding it in half. And I'm going to lay this directly underneath that piece of cording, and then just put a staple in it, one on each side. Now to put the skirting on, I'm just lining up the raw edges along the back here, centering this piece right on the back, and then I'm lining up one end of this little cardboard piece, and remember, this is what we used on the back to make a nice crisp edge, and you want a nice crisp edge all along the back of this, which is going to butt up right against this piece of cording right here. So make sure you're lining all that up and you have everything in place, and then go ahead and staple it. So once this is all in place, you're just going to take this corner and you're going to line it up with the edge of this leg and fold it over and just put a little dot of hot glue in here because that's going to hold it really nice and tight and make it look very professional all along this outer edge. Now once that's done, it's secured. So I'm just taking my pair of scissors here and I'm just cutting this out just to eliminate bulk. And so this is going to make a really nice crisp edge all along the top without excess bulk. And I'll go ahead and I'll stick a little piece of glue right in this corner just to hold this down, like so. And then when you flip it out, it'll be beautiful and perfectly crisp. So I've repeated the process on all the skirt pieces and they look beautiful. This chair is completely done, and you'll see the skirt is laying nice and straight compared to this one. So let me show you how to finish this off just so easily. So you're just going to go ahead and take your glue gun and you're going to just insert it up in here into the very top of this skirt and then press it down in place. And you'll repeat that on the other side. And then you'll take more glue and you'll put it on this little flap that covers the leg and just put a little dab right on there and then hold this down into place. Now, you've only got a few little dabs of glue in here, so it's not going to hold it like super, super tight, but it'll give it a nice natural look. And look, that's just a nice professional corner, and this is how you're going to finish every single corner on your chair. Well, I'm just running a lint roller over the top of the project just to make sure that I have all of my little scrap pieces of fabric picked up. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching this project, and I hope you've seen that this really is not a difficult thing to do. It's time consuming and it takes a little bit of patience, but other than that, look what I have as a result of my work. This piece of furniture is completely transformed. It's beautifully tailored. You can really see all of the curves and everything's pulled nice and tight. And it looks so professional. So I hope you've learned something, and I hope that you'll try this in your house too, because really that's what it's all about, is DIY that makes it look as if a professional did it. And I can move this chair into almost any room in my house and have it be at home. So this is Renee Romeo. Thank you so much for watching this project, and I'll bring you another great one in the future.